A lot of buyers think the attorney is the first person to review a deal in a real estate transaction, when in reality, there's so many things you and your agent should go over before attorney review. The earlier you catch risk, the better position you're in. My name is Chris Jordan. I'm a luxury real estate agent right here in New York City, and I help buyers navigate the luxury market in Manhattan and Brooklyn. In this video, we're breaking down some of the most important things you and your agent should go over before the attorney receives the terms. Let's break it down. The first is the building itself. I've said this in past videos and I'll say this in future videos. In New York City, the building is extremely important, and I can't stress this enough. Every building in New York City operates as its own micro market. So some of the things I look for in a building is, first thing first, are there any capital projects going on now, or will there be any capital projects in the future? So what's capital projects? Capital projects are big renovations like boilers, roofing, elevator, and so on and so on. The next thing I look for is, how will they be paying for these capital projects? There's two main ways to pay for capital projects. One are with reserves, and two is with assessments, right? Right now, let's talk about assessments. Assessments are additional monthly charges on top of the regular common charge for condos and maintenance fees for co-ops. Assessments can be used to pay for capital projects, or they can be used to pay for emergencies. And while we're on the topic of assessments, you also want to know how long would the assessment last, right? Sometimes, even though it's a temporary monthly payment, sometimes buildings don't have an end date to it, so that can make the building very unaffordable for the buyer. So one, you want to know about capital projects. Two, you want to know about how will capital projects be paid for, whether we assessments or reserves. And three, you want to know, if it is assessments, how long will the assessments last for? Now this brings us into our next section. The second section is the financial profile of the building. When it comes to the financial profile of the building, the first thing you want to look for is the reserves. Closing on a contract, it can be hard to get some of the necessary paperwork, but sometimes you got to put pieces to the puzzle together. The number one thing you want to look for in regards to the financial profile of the building is the reserves, right? Now, how do you find the reserves? If you can find the minutes, where minutes are, everything that have been spoken about in board meetings, you probably can get a great idea of the financial picture of the building. You can ask the seller agent, things of that nature. Now, when you're closing on a contract, the attorney can definitely request this. Sometimes it's harder than others to get the financial profile of the building because of obvious reasons, right? If you can't get a great idea of the reserves, one of the things I like to look at unusual trends of the monthly charges. So one thing I like to see, if there was an unusual upward trend of the monthly charge, that gives you the opportunity to ask a question, right? Of course, it might have been an assessment, but you can see what was that assessment used to pay for. For example, strong reserves really shows the stability of a building, right? If a building has strong reserve, they probably won't need assessments to pay for emergencies, and that can make assessments much, much more stable. Now, also, if you get in financing, some banks also won't lend to buildings that don't have strong reserves. So strong reserves are very, very important, not only for security in regards to assessments, but for lending purposes as well. The third thing you and your agent should go over is the deal structure. I think when it comes to deal structure, a lot of buyers only focus on the purchase price. But there's so much more that goes into a deal than purchase price, right? You have contingencies, you have timing, there's all different types of different taxes that buyers and sellers pay. You can always watch my closing cost video for an in-depth review on that. So there's just so many little things to negotiate in a real estate transaction. And one thing I like to go off of is never ever assume, iron everything out. A lot of times you lose a lot of leverage when the deal is on the 1 yard line, because people think you don't want to negotiate then, and they think they have the leverage. So definitely iron everything out for the term sheet way before the deal gets to the attorney. The next one is building specific restrictions. Now, when it comes to building specific restrictions, you'll find this when it comes to co-ops, you'll find this in the house rules, and when it comes to condos, you'll find this in the bylaws. I think this matters even more in co-ops. I mean, condos too, but a lot of co-ops, every co-op building have different rules, so I would definitely look through it with a fine-tooth comb, and this is why knowing the building is so important. So what are some things to look for, right? If it's not going to be your primary residence, you want to look for pied-à-terre rules. I can already tell you now, if you are a pied-à-terre and it won't be your primary residence, you probably want to shy away from Carswell because they have very, very strict rules. Then you want to look for renting restrictions if you may want to rent it out in the future. Sometimes some buildings make you stay for a certain amount of time before you can rent it out. Another big one is renovation rules. You definitely want to know about what you can and cannot do and what have been done in the past, right? I know a lot of instances where the seller's agent may tell, yeah, just get approved and move in, and then you can ask the board, and then they move in with plans to renovate the kitchen or the bathroom, and they can't do it. So definitely have clarity on what you can and cannot do. A great way to get that clarity is looking through the minutes, or you can just ask the board how likely something is to be done. But definitely, if you are planning on renovating, never ever assume that you can renovate something, especially in a co-op, because there's a lot of strict rules in regards to this. I always tell buyers ownership limitations should never be an afterthought, and I think this one is the one that's an afterthought. A lot of people assume they can just do it just because they are purchasing it, right? Always know what your intent is and make sure that you're able to do what you need to do in that building. Moving on to overall risk-reward balance. So when it comes to this, I always say, right, ultimately it's always the buyer's decision, and your agent's job is not to replace the attorney, but it's to provide you with the necessary details to make the best decision for your future, right? So I think this is where this comes in. You look at all the four, you look at the building, the financial profile of the building. And this honestly should all be done before you see a unit, ideally, because you never want to get to the 1 yard line. I'm sorry, I'm a sports fan, so I have a lot of sports analogies, but you never want to get to the 1 yard line and not finish the drive, right? One of the worst things is not scoring on the goal line. So you definitely should know everything about the building, especially if you're looking at co-ops. You never want to go through the entire co-op process and then find out that a building has an assessment that they don't know when it's going to expire, because it can make the building very unaffordable. So always know all these details. You want to know about the building, you want to know about the financial profile of the building, you want to know about the building restrictions, and then you can see the unit if you like the unit, and it's all like a recipe, right? And I think if you have clarity on some of the questions I presented for you to ask your agent, I think you'll be in a great position to make a great decision, right? So the agent's job is not to replace the attorney, but it's to get things ironed out before the attorney gets the term sheet. Because a lot of times attorneys are going to assume the agent spoke to you about this, and yeah, they'll confirm some things. Like an attorney might call, like, hey, you know that the assessment that's on this term sheet is not necessarily what the assessment is right now, or things like that. But when it comes to a lot of the deal structure and things like that, attorney's job is just to make it into a contract. It's not to go over some of these things. So I hope I presented you with some great questions to ask your agent. With that being said, my name is Chris Jordan. I'm a luxury real estate agent right here in New York City. If you have any questions about any of the things we spoke about today, you can always shoot me an email here. Also, if you need any attorney recommendations, you can also shoot me an email. I'll shoot that over to you. With that being said, if you like this video, please watch the next video on your screen, and I'll see you on the next one.